For years, rules have been in place in New York to regulate companies offering payday loans. But in an effort to avoid the 25% cap on interest rates, companies have gotten creative with how they market and design what are effectively payday loans. But as part of the ongoing game of whack-a-mole, Democratic state lawmakers, with the support of consumer protection groups, are looking to expand state law to capture products avoiding the spirit of the existing laws. To discuss this campaign and more, we're joined in the Capitol Press Room by Assemblymember Steve Raga, a Queens Democrat who sponsors the latest regulatory effort. Welcome back to the show, Assemblymember.
Good to see you. Happy to be back.
And we're also joined remotely by Katy Lasell, the statewide campaigns coordinator for the New Economy Project, which promotes consumer protections in the economy. Thanks for making the time, Katy.
Thank you so much, David. Glad to be here.
Well, let's talk about the pending legislation known by the acronym STOP Act. It's designed to address what are seen as loopholes in the existing payday loan rules and regulations. What sort of activities are you looking to police better, and what is it about the status quo that isn't going far enough to capture these activities?
We have seen these actors that just because they define their service, they define their product as something else other than the loan, they're going outside and around our current New York state law. So these are actively payday loans. These are impacting negatively, disproportionately lower income workers in New York, a lot of folks in and around my district in Queens, and more so gig workers that are part of the gig economy that cannot wait any longer for their next paycheck to come in. So they find this app, and right now you don't got to go to a brick and mortar. The brick and mortar comes to you, and they find an easy way to get access to these loans. But at the same time, it's not called a loan. It'll be a tip. It'll be a service. It'll be anything else, anything so they could get food on the table or whatever they need in an emergency situation. That's not right. It's a way around what is the law. It's going over our usury cap, and this is why we're here today, making sure that New Yorkers are taken care of.
Well, yeah, Katy, what is it about these earned wage access companies, that's how they bill these initiatives, what is it about how they operate that skirts the existing rules and regulations? Is it because they're online? Is it because of something in how they're structured that allows them to skate enforcement under the current laws?
So a couple things. So they are actually two leading industry apps. Daily Pay and Moneyline are the target of major lawsuits right now by Attorney General Letitia James. And also, of course, there is a large community movement for the STOP Act. And so while they are not currently complying with our law, our usury cap, there are advocates, including our Attorney General around the state, that would like to see them comply with our usury cap. Currently, just to build a little bit on what the Assembly member said, currently we're seeing these apps marketing. Sometimes you'll see sort of the payday lenders of your, advertising that's like, get $500 free today. But when people are actually logging into these apps, downloading them, what they're finding is that they have to pay, in order to get the money in a timely manner, they have to pay extremely usurious interest rates, on average around 330% APR. And so what we're seeing is that as they are skirting the usury cap, pushing these extremely high-cost loans on New Yorkers, they are having a really severe effect, driving people deeper into debt, driving increased overdraft fees, driving repeat borrowing, and ultimately extracting hundreds of millions of dollars from New York State's working class in the process.
And while the Attorney General's office has taken action, the players here are going to argue that they are immune from this law, hence the legislative approach that we're seeing here with the Assembly members' bill. So what is it about this bill that would make it crystal clear that these types of actors, like Daily Pay, for example, or Moneyline, are not welcome to do business the way they are here in New York?
It makes it crystal clear because right now it would redefine and clarify what actually is their service. It is a loan. It is, by definition, that's what their service is. It will also include parts of their app like tips. Some of these apps, they have multiple screens on. You care to tip? How much do you want to tip? And some of these
tip the app.
Tip the app. You're already using the app because you don't have that much. and now you want to tip the app, and then some of these are it gets a little extreme, man. You got to see it. It's like a sliding scale, and it's like a happy-faced kid, and then the lower tip you have, they become sad and like crying or something.
Okay.
Like if you're in that position and you have a good heart anyway, they try to tip, but they don't have a lot anyway. So you could go through a dozen of like, nope, no tip, no tip, no tip until you do it. It's predatory. These companies are finding ways to keep the working poor in that cycle, and we just want to make sure we're clarifying the words on the actual document. This is a loan. We got to treat it like one.
So we want to make sure that any cost to borrowers is included in the calculation of interest, right? And that's part of what STOP does. And I wanted to add on to what the Assembly member said, that the infrastructure of some of these very tips-based apps, such as Earnin, they have created an infrastructure and architecture of the apps that really coerces tipping. So David, it was nice to hear you surprised that such an app, really a fintech app coming out of Silicon Valley, would prompt for tips. In fact, the California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation found that companies that push tips collect them 73% of the time. So that shows you how effective this coercive architecture is. And we want to make sure those high and steep costs to borrowers are included when we calculate interest.
Yeah, and just to add on, if you I forgot which company it was, but half of their profit was based on that tip, was on tips itself. So it's designed and built into their actual business model.
So what happens if you're successful with the legislative efforts, this becomes a law, and then these providers say, well, it doesn't make sense economically for us to even operate in New York. Is having these players out of New York better than the status quo? Is there a reason to think that we want to have something like this available for those instances where people do need, say, a cash advance for some reason?
For sure. And the bill doesn't outright take that option away. It's just because they don't define themselves or their service as a loan. They get to go over the usury cap.
Right, but what if their argument is, well, we can only make this business work if we can charge well in excess of 25%, and by regulating us, you're cutting off this important service to your constituents, low-income workers who might need help from time to time?
For sure. I'd say any business model that's predicated on taking advantage of the working poor should be changed.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that as well. So just first of all, what we're asking, again, like the Assembly member said, is not for anybody to leave the state. What we're asking for is very reasonable, and it's just that they follow our laws. It remains to be seen how they might respond to regulation. But I would be very concerned if industry said, well, we can't operate unless we are charging usurious illegal interest rates on our products. The other thing I'll add, David, is just that these companies are currently, just in New York State alone, waging a tens of millions of dollars lobbying, PR, and marketing campaign. Daily Pay, one of the two apps that was sued by our Attorney General, was a major sponsor of the Somos conference last year. They've got over $1 billion in backing from major Wall Street banks last year. So I would really pose the question, why can our community-based lenders offer products such as payday lending alternative products well within the usury limit, but these multi-billion-dollar companies wouldn't be able to operate if they follow our laws? I would really, to me, that raises major red flags. And like the Assembly member said, we just can't conscience, predatory lending in this state. And this is really what this bill is about, is not blocking any lenders, but saying if you lend here, you must follow our laws.
So, Katy, I know the issue of payday lending is not a new one to the New Economy Project. I think I've got years of interviews with different personnel to account for that. But I describe this as a game of whack-a-mole. So when you look at the legislation that's out there, does that just answer today's problem, or do you think it casts a big enough net that it will prevent the next person who has a creative solution for potentially circumventing these laws?
So we actually have another bill that is even more comprehensive that Assemblymember Raga is also carrying, called the End Loan Sharking Act, and that would really comprehensively close loopholes to make it harder for any industry to violate our usury law. Certainly, for us, the priority right now is the STOP Act, which we do think is going to comprehensively cover at least the earned wage access industry. And we did prioritize that bill this year and have been working hard on it because of just how well funded this industry is, how aggressively they have been trying in the state and nationally really to undermine our usury laws and our consumer protections. So that's why we're focused on that now. But we do have this other bill, the End Loan Sharking Act. And at the end of the day, David, we want to see, of course, legislation that preempts and predicts these new models. But, we may always see predatory lenders who are seeking to skirt the laws so that they can make as much money as possible. And our coalition is committed to ensuring that lenders in this state follow the law and that our communities are no longer exploited by predatory lenders in any industry.
Well, Assemblymember, Katy highlighted how much money the industry is spending to maintain the status quo. I'm curious how you see that manifest itself as you try to push these bills, because these are not exactly new concepts in Albany, so there clearly is some number of lawmakers for whom these arguments are resonating with. Maybe it's a good faith support, maybe it's because they're getting campaign contributions. But what has been your experience as you try to push these bills?
Yeah, for sure. We know that these are the bills that are going to make New Yorkers more protected here. That's why our coalition is pushing not just for the long-term legislative result, but also short-term, what we could pass this session. EWA companies are pushing back. They're pushing back hard. They don't want to be regulated because they're profiting so much, like what was mentioned here in New York. And they've attempted to introduce their own legislation.
Wolf in sheep's clothing sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I hear. And a legislation that they would already approve of that would necessarily keep their business going. So like any other industry that's looking to not leave, looking to make more and more opportunities and avenues for making that money off the back of working New Yorkers, that's an angle they're going.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation. We've been speaking with Assemblymember Steve Raga. He's a Queens Democrat. Assemblymember, thanks for making the time.
Anytime.
And we've also been hearing from Katy Lasell, the statewide campaigns coordinator for the New Economy Project. Thank you, Katy.
Thank you, David.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided in part by the Lawsuit Reform Alliance of New York. Fraud and lawsuit abuse impact car insurance costs for New Yorkers. Reforms are being proposed to mitigate their impact. Information on these reforms is available at keepnewyorkaffordable.org.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell & Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.